It is 3:06, and this is the Vince Coglianese Show on Thanksgiving Eve. But it's not Vince. You knew that. If you were here yesterday and paying attention, you knew that. It's Mike Opelka. Happy to be here. Thrilled to be here. My buddy Vince Coglianese has the Thanksgiving holiday off, and we are here on Thanksgiving Eve. And you're probably wondering how I know that it's Thanksgiving Eve. Well, that's because I paid very close attention to the important announcement from the Vice President of the United States. Not the Vice President-elect, J.D. Vance, but actually the current Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris. I know we hadn't heard from her in quite some time. And then after she arrived back in D.C., she apparently found it vital to get in front of a camera and talk to the nation, if not the world. Ladies and gentlemen, Vice President Kamala Harris.
We are all in this together. And on this practical eve of Thanksgiving, I wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving with the ability and to find the ability at this moment to just remember there is so much to be thankful for.
Did she burp in the middle of that? I think I got to go back on that just a second. Excuse me for interrupting the vice president, the woman who is a heartbeat away from being the leader of the free world. I'm wondering if there is something interfering with her cognitive state here, and not like interfering with Joe Biden. When she says, well, listen, it's almost as if it's 3 o'clock in the morning and the bartender's trying to get everybody to go home, or you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. And somebody's giving a lecture.
And on this practical eve of Thanksgiving, I wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving with the ability and to find the ability at this.
There it is, to find the ability. It's like Foster Brooks was being channeled. I don't know why this was allowed to come out.
Moment to just remember there is so much to be thankful for.
That's right.
And so I wish for you that you are surrounded by the people you love and who love you. As you know, I encourage you to be around family in whatever way you compose that family, but to take a moment and just reflect on all the good you have done and all the good you have yet to do.
And I want to reflect on the fact that I'm very thankful that America didn't make a horrible, horrible mistake on November 5th. I really don't understand how this got approved, unless the DNC saw the polling numbers that came out yesterday that show Kamala Harris is already the leading Democrat in any 2028 race. And there's an app out there that I have on my phone that tells me just how many days we are away from that election. We are currently 1,440 days away from the election. And the polling shows Kamala Harris is at 38% among all Democratic candidates. She's the leader. And she's 30 points ahead of Gavin Newsom. But the person in second place is not even a person. In second place among Democrat voters is, I don't know. So she's the titular head of the class, if you will, of Democrat candidates for 2028. And we'd all just like a little bit of break from election projections and polling, but I had to share that with you. And you have to wonder if those numbers were gathered and then the DNC said, we got to do something about this. How about a little self-inflicted wound? The Democrats on the Twitter X, at the Democrats, put out this message. And you tell me if this is actually helpful or this is a self-inflicted wound by Kamala Harris.
I just have to remind you, don't you ever let anybody take your power from you. You have the same power that you did before November 5th.
I really want to go back to that bar at 3 o'clock in the morning. I may or may not have experienced a situation like this where you're one of the last, I don't know, 4 people in the bar, and I'm counting the bartender and maybe one of the waitresses, and you're leaning up against the bar, and you may have been there long enough to start getting mail. I'm just saying. And there's a person next to you you've been having a really meaningful conversation with for 3 hours over several adult beverages. And that person is having a confidence crisis. And you and all your liquid wisdom and courage decide to give them a message.
I just have to remind you, don't you ever let anybody take your power from you. You have the same power that you did before November 5th.
That's right. Yes.
And you have the same purpose that you did. And you have the same ability to engage and inspire.
So I got the purpose, and I got the power, and I have the ability.
So don't ever let anybody or any circumstance take your power from you.
Got it. I absolutely, positively got it. I'm on it. Kamala. Thank you. That message, that video was posted on Twitter X by the Democrats. It has been seen more than 30 million times in less than 24 hours. There is no other logical explanation for that other than they're saying, we cannot get rid of her. She is like gum on your shoe on a hot day. I know it's not a hot day, so nobody can realize what I really mean by that. But you remember back to the summer when you're walking around and the pavement is scalding hot and someone spit out their gum and you step on it and then, you just can never get it off. I contend that's how they view her. That is how the Democrats view her. And there was more than just those 2 clips. There's one more. Kamala Harris, a Kamala Moments, Veep Thoughts. Seriously, these are truly Veep Thoughts from Kamala Harris.
Look, this mission that we have, it takes hard work.
Yeah.
But as you've heard me say many times, we like hard work. Hard work is good work. Hard work can be joyful work.
And you eat no for breakfast, too, right? Isn't that? I remember that. You eat no for breakfast. Well, on November 6th, you got served no for breakfast, if my memory serves me right. But continue.
And in doing our work, we will remain committed and intentional about building community, building coalitions, reminding people that we all have so much more in common than what separates us. We will be armed with the faith and the fuel that tells us what is possible and then drives us to achieve it.
Unburdened by something. I think she's fueled by something. I definitely do. It's a 9-minute video. Those are just 3 of the clips from it. I really have to question the seriosity, not a real word, don't send me messages, the seriosity of the Democrat Party by allowing this to come out. In the words of John McEnroe, you cannot be serious. Seriously, you can't be serious that you think or thought this was anywhere, on any time, in any planet, a good idea. No, it cannot be. It certainly cannot be. And yet here it is. This is one of the most damning indictments against her. You know, we talked yesterday about why Joe Biden was not 25th Amendmented it. And the question is, or the answer is probably because of this video. This video is damning proof, evidence, a prima facie case that this lady is incapable. She is the empty pantsuit that so many of us were telling you she is. And maybe, just maybe she needs help. And we talk about what you're supposed to do on Thanksgiving, and we talked about being compassionate to your friends and family members who are going to be upset about the election results. I'm surrounded by neighbors. I live in a community that is anarchists, communists, socialists, Democrats. You could use one word and cover all that. And they're not happy. And their community Facebook page is just daily vitriol and spewing hate. And Donald Trump isn't even sworn in yet. So the recipe that we have cooked up for them for Thanksgiving is just to smile and not gloat and to be kind. But in this case, I think this lady needs actual professional help. And it does feel like this is an intentional warning from the DNC, although there's nobody ahead of the DNC right now. They're waiting until after the inauguration to pick a new leader. They're busy blame-storming right now. We'll get to that. There's a lot on that. And I'm not alone in my feelings on this. I see the phones are already lighting up. 888-630-9625. 888-630-9625. Let's go to Mike in Gainesville. Mike, that's pretty impressive pontificating, isn't it?
That it is, Mr. Opelka. Happy holidays.
Yes. Well, we're just going to say happy Thanksgiving. I'm not going to genericize it. I'm going straight for the accurate. Happy Thanksgiving, Mike.
Happy Thanksgiving to you.
Thank you, bro.
They had to release that because of all the effort they put in to getting that announcement out. That took about 15 takes. That was the best one.
Wow. That's a really interesting point. This is the administration that built a television studio on the White House grounds. They built a fake Oval Office. They built an entire setup so they could master the message. And you're right. That was probably done in more than one take. And the entire 8-minute or 9-minute address was pre-written. Or I wonder if they just gave her bullet points. Wow. I'd like to get my hands on the outtakes. I'm wondering if maybe there's an insider that would send them to us, which would be delicious. Absolutely delicious.
Indeed.
Well, thank you, Mike. That's a good idea on that. Good take on that. I appreciate you. Happy Thanksgiving. Let's go to Rick in Reston, Virginia. Hey, Rick, welcome. It's the Coglianese Show with Opelka. What's up?
Hey, thanks so much for taking my call, man. I'll be brief. I had this idea of like a Robert Ludlum novel or a Frederick Forsyth novel. They got her kind of drunk or kind of stoned, convinced her this was going to be a good idea, and they did it because the Democratic Party does not ever want her to run for anything ever again. This video sinks her in electoral politics forever. It is a 8.5-minute political commercial against her future success in election politics.
Wow, that's really interesting. That they maybe have the party, capital P, as Chris Plant likes to say, may have contributed to her condition in some way, shape, or form. Kind of like the way Cary Grant was forced to drink a bunch of booze in North by Northwest, and then they put him in Laura's Mercedes, and he crashed the car, but still survived. Yeah, that's a very interesting thought.
I'm convinced that's exactly what happened here. And we'll be able to see whether she ever runs with the party's backing again for another office. The proof's going to be in the pudding here.
Yeah, they may have already told her what her options are. And it's I would imagine it's doubtful that there are going to be options to run for the presidency again. The only other option may be, and this has been bandied about, I saw Sarah Carter posting on this earlier too, that she may be a candidate for the governor's mansion in California. And that would be interesting, which would mean they're probably ceding the nomination to Newsom. Well, we'll see. We got 1,440 days until the next presidential election. Thank you, Rick. Great thinking there. I like it. I appreciate you. Happy Thanksgiving. It's 3:25 on this Thanksgiving Eve, Wednesday. Mike Opelka, my name, in for Vince Coglianese. If you're looking for the stories that I'm focused on today, you can get a cheat sheet at pureopelka.com. I post the stories there usually in the morning. And then we get to as many of them as we can. And there's always breaking news, too. So we seem to have a lot of things going on. Yesterday, we got the announcement of the ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah. It started early this morning here and appears to be holding, but there's still no news on Gaza, which is where Hamas, the guys who started the latest conflict, are headquartered, and they're the ones who have the Americans held hostage. We opened up talking about Kamala Harris and that ridiculous tape. Ridiculous. And it's just it's just embarrassing, I'm sure, for them. And you guys have interesting opinions on all of this. Let's go to line 2, Jim in Naperville, Illinois. Jim, you enjoyed the Kamala Harris lecture series?
Yeah, Mike, and thanks for filling in for Vince, and happy Thanksgiving. But, it makes me nostalgic. I'm 63, so I'm sure you can commiserate. And, back when public drunks were kind of fun, we had Lee Marvin and Capaloo. We had Otis and the Andy Griffith Show, and we all laughed about it. And Kamala was kind of fun. We're having fun at it. But you know what? The seriousness of it is she's in office. She's the vice president for 2 more months, and she's the one holding the reins if Biden can't fill the presidency, which is a real possibility. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
53 and a half days.
Nervous.
Yeah, we've got a little over 53 days left, and she is the option. God forbid something happened to the president of the United States and he's not able to do his job. It is a little distressing. But, yeah, we come from a time when America had Otis in Andy Mayberry, who was the town drunk who got to let himself into jail and let himself out of jail. So it was a little more socially acceptable, not so much anymore. Thank you, Jim. Happy Thanksgiving to you and yours. Dustin's in Winchester. Hello, Dustin.
Hey, Mike. The worst part of that video was the beginning with Tim Walz, with Ken Doll, Tim Walz. Oh, my God. Horrible. But I wanted to mention the fact that there's a news report about Kamala's internal polling never showed her ahead of Donald Trump. And, of course, we all knew that. But how come the pollsters didn't know that?
Yeah,
what happened there? I sensed a little bit of coercion with the media and the pollsters.
Well, it seems like they're blame storming right now and trying to come up with the right explanation for how they lost this. And David Plouffe is one of the people who's come forward and said, we had no idea it was this bad. Sure you didn't. I'm not buying that. Thank you, Dustin. Appreciate you being there. Happy Thanksgiving. It's Opelka in for Coglianese on WMAL. It is 3:35 on this Thanksgiving Eve, a Wednesday that feels like a Friday for most folks, except people in the media. There's a whole lot of people working in the media. Left, right, center. We have to continue, and we will. Mike Opelka is my name. I'm in for Vince today. He will return on Monday, I assume. And if you're a WMAL listener, I'll be in for Chris Plant on Friday, because that's how this works. So I invite you to stick around. You don't ever have to change the station. Chris was just talking about the Washington Times and the work that's done at the Washington Times, and I can tell you it is worth your time as well. There is a piece in the Washington Times entitled, "Should Illegal Aliens Awaiting Hearings Be Moved to Martha's Vineyard? With immigration reform, all options should be on the table." It is a terrific piece. It is something that I encourage you to seek out and read. It's from Jonathan Fahey and Ariel Davidson. Jonathan Fahey is with us to discuss this piece. Jonathan, I'm got to believe your tongue is planted firmly in your cheek with that headline, but this is a real serious story. Welcome.
Yeah, it's it's sort of being joking around, but the point is quite serious, and the point is overall and focusing on sort of the mayor in Denver, the mayor in Boston, the governor of Massachusetts, all doing the social justice performance art after the election, saying they're going to fight to prevent any deportations from their cities. They're willing to go to jail. All of these types of things. And the point, I want to make, which is that, these leftists always want other people to bear the cost of their policies, and I would say failed policies, although they think it's a success having massive illegal immigration. So, yeah, the point is, if they want people to stay, why can't they stay in their area? Say Martha's Vineyard. It's a large island that's lightly populated through most of the year, it would be an ideal place for people to stay, and the people up there presumably would be happy. But of course, we know they wouldn't be. But there's, the important point is here when, you see that Denver mayor saying he's willing to go to jail to prevent deportations. Well, what's really bad about this is you look at what happened to Lake and Riley, and it just shows that a mayor in New York, for example, Eric Adams, who has a sanctuary cities policy that releases illegal aliens back out in the community rather than turn them over to ICE, well, other people suffer those consequences. Lake and Riley's parents are going to be without her this Thanksgiving because Eric Adams wanted to appeal to the far left. So, this idea that, you can just decide on your own what laws to enforce, what, to allow criminals to remain in your community, it affects all of us. So that's why we wrote this, that it should be, taken seriously. They don't really, they have a right to not cooperate, but they don't have a right to obstruct. And if they do, they should, suffer the consequences of doing so.
Yeah, I agree with you. And obviously, I'm on the side of law and order and protection of Americans first. And that isn't what we're seeing in sanctuary cities. As a guy who used to live in New York City for more than 2 decades, I've been back recently, and it is almost unrecognizable. And it's not just because of the illegal invasion by the immigrants who are populating hotels that used to be tourist destinations, but it's also by the lack of enforcement of laws around the marijuana situation. You get a contact high in New York City just by walking around. But the illegal thing has a life and death component to it, as you correctly pointed out with the murder of Lake and Riley. That family is going to have an empty chair. And the Biden administration and Joe Biden's campaign always like to point out the kitchen table stories and the fact that we were going to have empty chairs around the table, whether it was because of the pandemic or some other reason. And in the case of the illegals who are here and the criminal illegals, those are situations that could have been avoided. I have to tell you, though, Jonathan, as I love the snark. I love using sarcasm to educate people. But, your idea of sending the illegals back to Martha's Vineyard to wait for their hearings, aren't you worried about their safety because the Obamas live on Martha's Vineyard? And we all know what a deadly situation it is to be close to the Obamas. What if they're paddleboarding near them?
Yeah, I was gonna say that could be kind of scary. That you don't want to be the illegal paddleboard instructor over there because it could be a little bit scary. But yeah,
terrible.
And they really weren't welcome. Remember when Ron DeSantis sent, I believe it was like 49 people up there, probably a year or two ago. And they were shuttled off the island within 24 hours. They didn't even have a chance to get like a bowl of clam chowder before they were gone. So it's just so funny that, all these other communities, the left is so freely, they condemn in the harshest ways people in these communities that speak up about the harm to their communities by illegal immigration. They're called racist, xenophobic. But once the left has to, bear some of the cost, all of a sudden it's a different story. And, the other thing that's really important about the illegal immigration, which I do think this is another thing that why these cities or places should bear the cost is I think a study came out at the beginning or like June of this year from, I think it's this organization called FAIR, and it's been widely reported that the cost of illegal immigration just to taxpayers was $150 billion just last year. And most of those costs are things like schools, public safety, things like that. So those are by and large local costs. So if you want to be a sanctuary city, be it for everyone and pay the cost, and let the people that don't want to be a sanctuary city and don't want to have illegal immigration and want to have safety, security, good health, good education, let them not bear the burden, let them save the money, because, it's a tremendous burden once you get past what everyone is always talking about, which is public safety, extremely important, national security, drug deaths, but $150 billion a year and probably growing is a massive, cost. And that doesn't include things like if you want to go see a doctor, but there's not enough doctors because there are all these illegal immigrants in your community that you have to wait for your child. So, people are poor, less safe, less healthy, less educated because of this, because if your school's overrun and all the attention is given to the newcomers. Your child is left behind or put aside or whatever you want to say. So, and those things never get recovered. You can't recover that with money down the road or anything else. So yeah, they should absorb the cost because they get all the benefit. In the left, that mayor of Denver will probably be a hero in the left, somehow, go on the Mount Rushmore of Democrats next to George Floyd or whoever else they have up there, and he will be a hero. So he wants the credit for being a hero. He should bear some of the cost, and his citizens should bear some of the cost, not the rest of us that don't want any part in this. But another thing this shows, I think the Democrats most of them are, the lesson they've learned from this election is, I think, double down on crazy, because more of them are going farther left than moving to the center. There's only a few of them that I could think of that are like, hey, let's take a step back, and maybe this open borders for 4 years wasn't serving the interests of the American people very well. There's very few in that camp, and a lot more in the camp of, the Boston governor, Governor Pritzker of Illinois, all these other people that seem to be vying for that wing of the party and that support.
Yeah, and I point out that there is one Democrat who appears to have stepped up, and that's Henry Cuellar of Texas, the guy who is keenly aware of the problem because he represents a border district. And Cuellar, as a Democrat, has stepped up and said, this Remain in Mexico thing sounds like it really could be a good idea. But the rest of them, as you pointed out, from Pritzker and let's not forget Brandon Johnson in Chicago, the mayor who is facing an internal upheaval, a 50-0 rejection of his attempts to put more tax on the people in order to pay for all those illegals. There is a tide turning. And I think there is a parallel we might be able to point out, Jonathan, with what AOC and the Progressive Squad experienced. They were said to be the leaders of the party a couple of years ago, but there appears to be a rejection and pushback from people that realize we can't be this radical. It's going to hurt us. And 2026 is going to be here very soon. And all of those members of the House are going to have to face a reckoning. I think your number of, $160 billion, I think that's a really low number.
I think it's probably low, and that's just based on, the best estimate of tax costs, not the other societal costs that are hard to measure. But I bet it's low, and I think you're right. But I think those things are very, very hard to measure, but you're probably right. And yeah, again, what else can you do with $150 billion? And this was all done at the behest of the Biden administration with Alejandro Mayorkas. They've basically been encouraging people to falsely claim asylum for the past 4 years, and they know these are not legitimate asylum seekers by and large, because if they were, the administration would have part 2 of the plan would say, why don't we stop the torture and persecution that would cause 10 million people to come here, because they know it's not really happening. And it's just so disgraceful. And when I think, going back to Laken Riley, I just don't even know how Alejandro Mayorkas can even sleep at night knowing most crimes theoretically can be prevented. It could have been prevented if you look back, but at least people tried to prevent them. Here, there was no effort to try to prevent it, which makes it so much worse, because, her killer could have been stopped 3 or 4 times, meaning if laws were actually enforced in good faith, it would not have happened. So, but you're right. There is this there's a civil war in the Democratic Party, and it'll be interesting how it breaks out in 2026. Do they come back to the center and try to reclaim that? Do they go, it's an off-year election year, and go farther left and see where things go in 2028? But it is quite interesting because they are demoralized, but it does seem like there's still more enthusiasm on the far left than the center, the Henry Cuellar, the Josh Shapiro, I would say wing or whatever you want to call it, of the party. They seem to have been at least quieter in the last few weeks, which probably is not probably a smart move to be quiet after election for a little while.
Oh, yeah. You take cover. And when you come back and say, I've got answers, and my reasonableness will be the answer. Because in 2026, you have the entire House, of course, but you have the Senate, which has 33 seats up. 20 of those seats are Republican seats, and there are 13 Democrat seats. Now, of the 20 Republican seats, 19 are pretty much safe seats, almost a lock. So that's only one at risk. Of the 13 Democrat seats, Only 9 are marginally secure. So the Democrats will have to come back to the center on the Senate, whereas the Republicans can stay pretty much along on their message right now and feel fairly comfortable that they will retain the majority in the Senate through the 2026 midterms. But that's yet to be seen. The House, on the other hand, if the Republicans can keep the majority and retain control, it will, I think, tamp down some of the crazies inside the Democrat Party, because unless Hakeem Jeffries gets the gavel, it's going to be really hard for them to stand up and make any points and move any agenda forward. This piece by Jonathan Fahey and Ariel Davidson is in the Washington Times, worth your time, as I said. Jonathan, is there a place we should follow you on social media?
Twitter, John for Fairfax, but don't post a whole lot there, but I appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate you getting on with us today. A happy Thanksgiving to you and yours.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you, sir. There he goes. Interesting conversation when you start speculating about what should happen. Tom Homan, yes, the new sheriff in town, was at the border yesterday, and he was on the air last night with Laura Ingraham talking about what should be done with some of these mayors and governors. And he said some pretty powerful stuff, and I will share it with you just around the corner. It's 3:55, the Vince Coglianese program. Mike Opelka sitting in for my friend Vince Coglianese. Happy Thanksgiving Eve to you and yours. We just had a really interesting discussion with the Washington Times opinion columnist Jonathan Fahey about the migration issue, and how there are governors and mayors who are saying they're not going to honor the federal laws. They're not going to respect the authority of the federal laws that protect our citizens from these migrant invasions. And yesterday, Tom Homan, the incoming border czar, the new sheriff in town, as I like to call him, was at the border, and then he went over to the local television studio nearby Eagle Pass, Texas, to have a conversation with Laura Ingraham. And Mr. Homan had some pretty specific words for any of those mayors and governors, especially the New Mexican governor, who said she's not going to let them take people out. She's going to block it. She thinks it's inhumane. Mr. Homan was very clear.
Well, first of all, what's cruel about it? We have a massive illegal immigration flow on the border, historic flows that overwhelm the Border Patrol. Sex trafficking up 600%. 250,000 dead Americans from fentanyl. We got a record number of known suspected terrorists and people on the terrorist watch list crossing the border. We got children dying on the border every day. We got women being sexually assaulted by the cartels every day. Someone's going to die on the border tonight. Women are being raped on the border tonight. So what's cruel about securing that border and saving lives, first of all? But I'll give her the same warning I'm giving the rest of the sanctuary city mayors and the governors. You can not help us. That's fine. You should get the hell out of the way then, because we're going to do the job. President Trump has said public safety threats and national security threats will be the priority right out of the gate. And I can't believe there's any elected official that doesn't want public safety threats out of their communities. Their number one responsibility is protecting the communities. So
yes, that is the truth. Tom Homan is a breath of fresh air and will bring safety and security, not just to the border, but to the whole country. It's Opelka in for Coglianese on WMAL.